Hi everyone. Welcome to the first of our Brown Bag with the LDL Fellows events. I'm so excited to see you all here to learn about and discuss some of the cool work that's being done on the LDL. A look at what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to provide a quick overview of the LDL and Collections as Data project. Then I'm going to pass it off to our special guest, Jen Kramer, who is going to give us a brief tour of some of the LDL's oral history collections. Next, we will hear from today's LDL Fellow, Curry Croker, who will present her project mapping post-World War II New Orleans commercial areas. And we'll wrap up with discussion, questions, announcements. If you have any questions or comments throughout either Jen's showcase or Curry's presentation, you can drop them in the chat and we'll return to them at the end, or you can just keep them in your mind and share them when we get there. This Brown Bag series is part of our LDL as Data project. Our LDL as Data project is funded by and part of a larger project called Collections as Data, which is an effort made possible by the Mellon Foundation. What do we mean when we talk about collections as data? We mean using our digital cultural heritage collections, digitized letters, maps, photos, etc., in computational analysis, such as text analysis, digital mapping, and more. We are part of a 6-team cohort charged with creating examples of how to implement and use digital cultural heritage materials as data. And this fellowship is part of that work. Our specific grant project is titled "And 25 of Our Closest Friends, the LDL as Community-Focused Data." We are in the months of wrapping it up. And the main idea of this project was to explore what it would look like to offer all contents of the LDL as data. The project took on 2 tracks, technology and community. On the technology side, we considered LDL deliverables such as bulk download, machine readable rights statements, proper restriction rules. And on the community side, we asked, is this something all 30 plus LDL contributing institutions would want? The LDL, again, is composed of over 30 participants: public libraries, academic libraries, cultural heritage museums, government repositories, and all of those voices matter. Is this something that is appropriate for all collections within the LDL? Some of our collections contain culturally sensitive material that should be handled with care. And how can we consider the ethical implications as well as the promise and potential of collections as data at the LDL level? During this series, our LDL as Data Fellows will present their digital projects. This fellowship is, in my mind, a perfect merger of the 2 tracks of our overall grant project, technology and community. Our fellows have created LDL as data use cases for future researchers, teachers, and students. So they are providing ways that our LDL data can be used alongside digital tools. And they're doing this in part to guide and inspire our community of users and contributors. The idea for this fellowship developed out of a focus group meeting during which LDL administrators, I'm sure several of you were at that meeting, voiced a desire for more informal, community-focused meetings and showcases. We've got 3 Brown Bag talks after this one. On October 27th, we'll hear from Alexandra Chasen. She's a PhD student in English. She's going to present her project, Gender, Sexuality in the 1825 Civil Code of Louisiana. That's a text encoding project. On November 18th, we'll hear from Isabel Haynes. She is a senior at Tulane. She's going to present her project, A Sonic Map of New Orleans, and she will be joined by a special guest, Molly Mitchell-Neal, who will talk to us about Freedom on the Move, a database of fugitives from American slavery. And on December 7th, we'll hear from Victoria Elmwood. She will present the Body Web, Mapping Primary Digital Resources for the Study of Sex Work in New Orleans. And she will be joined by special guest Kate Schuster of the Hard History Project. Today we're hearing from Curry Croker. She's Special Collections Registrar and Archivist at the Monroe Library at Loyola University. And before joining Loyola, she was an Information Supervisor at the Brooklyn Public Library. But to kick us off, our opening act, so to speak, is Jen Kramer, Director of the T. Harry Williams Center for Oral History. And she is going to show us some of the items in our LDL oral history collections.
Thank you so much, Leah, for that introduction and for thinking of the center and for inviting me to speak here today. And my name is Jen Kramer. I run the T. Harry Williams Center for Oral History with LSU Libraries, and I will share with you our Louisiana Digital Library page in a second. But first, I would like to, before I forget, the very important thanking of everybody that has made this possible. So, of course, none of it would be here. We wouldn't be here at all without the team of talent that we have at our disposal here at LSU and the libraries particularly. So I'd like to thank the center's coordinator, Lindsay Hartman, who worked with the team over at LSU Libraries Technology Initiatives, Elisa Nakin, I hope I pronounced her name right, John Guillory, Michael Stewart, Sophia Ziegler, and Kyle Tanglau, to name a few with whom we work directly. Thank you guys for making this happen. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of just do a quick little show and tell. And again, I really appreciate that opportunity to be able to do that. So this is the Williams Center's landing page on the Louisiana Digital Library. And, you know, we have over 6,000 interviews, right? And about 700 of those are fully processed. That is, there's a finding aid and a catalog record. So all cataloged collections, except those that are restricted, will eventually live here on the Louisiana Digital Library. Our priority collections, the ones that we wanted to get out first, are the ones that you see here. These are the most requested and the most useful in teaching and in training, and as well as being the most requested by researchers. And one of the ones that we couldn't wait to get up was the McKinley High School Oral History Series. And I'll just run through that really quickly. This is otherwise known as the Old South Baton Rouge collection. There's almost 200 interviews here done over about a 5 or 6 year period by students in the community of Old South Baton Rouge about African American history. So it started out with the history of McKinley High School, moved on to the history of businesses, moved on to the history of African American churches, and moved on to the thing that it is, this collection is most widely used for, which is the history of the Baton Rouge bus boycott. So as you can see, there's a ton of interviews here, and I can just walk you through. For example, Ernestine McGee, I'll just click on it and kind of show you what that looks like. The lovely thing, and the team worked really hard on this, making this possible, is that you see the transcription, and this is, you know, helpful for anyone in academia to sort of, you don't want to listen to 90 minutes of interviews. You know, you want to be able to look at a finding aid, look at an abstract, look at metadata, but you also want to be able to look at the verbatim transcription itself. And you can see there's a a timestamp on every page, so that you can then, I won't press play because I don't want to overdo it yet, but you can follow along, you know, with the minutes and seconds in the transcription as well. So here's Bernestine McGee's oral history interview. Here's the transcription. The metadata is below, so essentially the tags. And then you have just a very brief description of the interview, and you're able to listen to the entire interview and follow along with the transcription. And this has just revolutionized the way we have been able to get interviews to patrons, and also use these as teaching tools. Quickly, you can kind of see that we have a collection level description of the entire series, and then you'll have item level descriptions of each and every interview. Other series that people really enjoy are the Hurricane Betsy Survivors Oral History Project, the Bayou Lafourche Oral History Project, civil rights, the Sea Grant coastal change, political series, of course, LSU history. So essentially that's how it's set up. You can navigate it through the collection level. You can navigate it through the interview themselves level. And eventually, like I said, all of our collections will be online. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick and just tie this up. While we continue to add interviews to the existing series like military politics and civil rights and university history, next up on the runway to be uploaded, again with the help of its tech initiatives folks, are the Sue Hebert collection, that's Life on the Atchafalaya Basin, the history of the Louisiana Cooperative Extension, collections on African-American history, the Perique Tobacco collection, a Hurricane Katrina collection, the LGBTQ history in Lafayette, and women in the environmental movement are a few of the ones that are on the runway. Eventually, our goal is to upload interviews as they are cataloged, and I expect we'll get to that point in the next calendar year. Please do visit our collections and the website online. And please reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about the center, oral history in general, scheduling a training workshop for fieldwork, or even partnering with the center. Thank you for your time today. Like you, I'm looking forward to hearing from Carrie.
Jen, there's one question in the chat that we might as well ask right now. Jarrell Jones asking, can the transcription text be searched through your homepage search, or do you have to search within the PDF document on the LDL?
So both in a way. So you can, like the general search could lead you to the collection. Let's say you searched and found that name. And then once you get in there, you can do a Control F and just search through that transcription, which is the lovely thing about, now, our goal is to make these, preserve them. And so this is part of the preservation process, right? We're preserving it, putting in multiple places, and then the access and discovery and the searchability of it. That's what makes it so wonderful. And I just can't tell you how happy I am to be able to take these to classrooms and trainings and to be able to present them to you, and for y'all to be able to see the beauty of these the way that we see them.
Thank you, Jen. If anyone else has questions about oral history, you can keep those in mind or drop them in the chat and we can revisit them at the end. But now we will pass it over to Carrie Croker.
Hello, everybody. Let me get my screen sharing. Okay. Greetings, everyone. I'm so glad you could be with us today to check out my LDL as Data project, mapping World War II New Orleans commercial areas using the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections data. My LDL as Data proposal was to create a map employing images and CSV metadata from the Frank Bertocci photographers collection from the Historic New Orleans collection. Specifically, all the records with the subject of stores and shops and the geographic location of New Orleans. This subset highlights commercial areas in post-World War II New Orleans, and I proposed that it could be used as a prototype for designing digital exhibitions of collections and as a teaching tool for exploring simple mapping and research techniques. I'm going to walk you through the project, providing the general process by which the map was created, its uses as a resource to browse and engage with, its potential as teaching tool, and its use as a catalyst for engaging with the city to experience it in a deeper way. My primary tasks for creating the map were to download the CSV spreadsheet from my LDL search results of the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collection, locate longitude and latitude information for each location using Google Maps, gather present-day Google Street View links for each location, upload edited and augmented metadata into Google My Maps to map locations, and then download and attach item record images to the mapped locations. I want to share a brief overview of the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections and why I chose this collection for my project. As commercial photographers, Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci Studios took tens of thousands of photographs and negatives chronicling the face and growth of Louisiana and New Orleans in particular during the second half of the 20th century. These images are held at the historic New Orleans collection, with the LDL providing access to 10,647 digitized images and associated metadata. The collection documents major industries, construction, and real estate trades in New Orleans during a period of racial integration, labor disputes, and urban growth. I chose this collection for practical reasons, as it lends itself to mapping due to the available address information in the metadata, but also for reasons of personal interest. The Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections remind me of collections related to public transportation construction that I had worked with as a photo archivist in New York City. These collections consisted of historic photos surveying the urban environment of New York, covering a span of over 100 years. And while I was working with these collections, I kept finding myself in locations I had recently cataloged and seeing, for example, the Pan Am building of the 1960s becoming the MetLife building of 2005, seen pictured here. This work, paired with the habit of spending my weekends walking the city, aided in my receiving the city in a noticeably different way. This layer of the past found in working with historic photographs of the place in which I lived liberated my experience of the city from the regular workaday habits of commerce and expediency by contextualizing the vibe of various areas in the city. These walks and work during this time period brought me to become interested in the theory and practice of psychogeography. If you're unfamiliar with psychogeography, it is briefly defined as the effect of a geographical location on the emotions and behavior of individuals. It is a theory that was centered around post-World War II lettrist and situationist cultural movements in France, with roots in the idea of Baudelaire's flaneur, the work of Walter Benjamin, Marxist theory, Dada, and Surrealism. The theory of psychogeography has been employed in various ways by architects, academics, writers, artists, and activists, but it's also a practice that involves walking and mapping. Here's an early example of a psychogeographic map created by Marxist theorist and situationist Guy Debord in 1957. It is of Paris and was created by cutting up a pre-existing map of the city and rearranging it with the shortest route between each area marked in red. Imposing specific routes or rules on how you devise a psychogeographic map or walk can be part of the practice, sometimes purposely absurd, as is recording routes after drifting through an area and mapping it afterwards. In all cases, the goal is, in part, to become re-enchanted with your city as you explore its effect on you and the details along the way. Psychogeography asks the practitioner to pay attention to details such as the architecture, landscape, colors, sound, smell, how the built environment is or isn't pedestrian friendly, or how institutions of power dictate its use or conceal it. All of this coalesces into how all of it makes you feel. Psychogeography encourages discovery within the familiar. And when you critique urban geography through this lens, you can also imagine it differently, be it as a future utopia or as a palimpsest of its past. In any account, when practicing psychogeography, the practitioner as walker learns more about a place and how it affects them. This is a great example of applying psychogeographic map making in the classroom. Pictured here is a psychogeographic project where students created a map of a walking route to the Ohio Wesleyan campus, with the route devised needing to meet the criteria that it followed the shape of the school mascot's paw. Notice the red paw shape, the paw shape in red. This map includes smell, texture, and soundscape experienced along the way, among other observations. The historic photographs, illustrations, and maps in our collections are a way to explore the effects of urban geography over time. They provide a rich resource to gather information about what existed before and how that shapes your experience in the present. Be it photos of commercial areas in New Orleans or photos of university campus life, they all can have potential to add meaning and bring new realizations to the surface once explored and recontextualized. With the framework of psychogeography and the collection as inspiration briefly explained, let's switch gears and continue with the process by which I created the actual map. I came to the conclusion that selecting images from the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections that illustrated commercial areas were the most viable, and decided to select the subject of stores and shops and the geographic location of New Orleans as a manageable sample that wasn't too large for the scope of this project. Since these locations all had commercial use, it would also be easier to confirm addresses through readily available resources. This advanced search of the collection totaled 87 records before I started my location research. Once I was ready to start editing the resulting CSV spreadsheet downloaded from the LDL for these records, I made choices to eliminate fields in the spreadsheet that would unnecessarily clutter the image info on the map. Examples of this are the geographic location for all of these being New Orleans. That will be established by the map itself, but also I chose to delete the original image format metadata, figuring that if users are intrigued, they will follow the additional permalink to the LDL for specifics. I made sure to inform users of the availability of this data in the map's description, including copyright. Additionally, by eliminating the few pre-World War II images that populated my search results, it gave the map more focus by positioning it within a more usable time frame and the time period when the majority of the images in this collection were created. When proposing the project, I noted that the only address information available was found in the title of the image or the description, and that some of these would need to be clarified. The descriptive and title information gave addresses or city blocks, but in some cases, these addresses were no longer correct, or the image was an interior shot only accompanied by a company or retailer's name. In choosing commercial locations, I knew that I would be able to reference New Orleans city directories to locate specific business addresses, as well as search the historic Times-Picayune database for store advertisements, news related to construction, or employment postings in the classifieds. Here's an example of an item from my search results without exact location information. It is a photograph of a display for Dr. Scholl's Foot Comfort Man. Notice that this is an interior shot. This is the title and descriptive information pulled from that record. Note that this indicates that it is a store display for Dr. Scholl's products commissioned by the Crest Company with no address information. But the detail of it being commissioned by the Crest Company is enough of a lead to go on. So let's look to a New Orleans city directory and see what we find. Here is the listing for Crest, SH & Co. from the 1958 New Orleans City Directory, giving the exact address as 923 Canal Street. The address is now confirmed for 1958, but what is there today, and will it help confirm the location? Eureka! 923 Canal Street is currently the location of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Note the SH Crest 5, 10, and 25-cent store lettering above the awning. Given that there were no other addresses listed in the city directory for the company, and the architectural details indicate what lived in this building before, this was confirmation enough for me to include it in the map. I wanted to provide this example as a means to illustrate how using Google Street View can be a useful tool for engaging students with reference resources. I've used this process with students creating social media posts for images found in Loyola's special collections and archives, and have found it to be helpful as a means to convey psychogeographic implications and the history of place, while also supporting the enrichment of research skills and visual literacy. Plus, it is fun as it provides the thrill of discovery. Confirming the locations of each item was an enjoyable part of the project, and I think one of the most direct applications of how this project could be used to teach research skills across resources. Once I had my locations verified, I took the longitude and latitude information available in the URL from the Google Street View for each one and added them to my spreadsheet. See the yellow box for the location of latitude and longitude information available in the URL. I then also added the entire link for the Street View of the location to my spreadsheet. With all my viable locations verified and the latitude and longitude information added to my spreadsheet, I was ready to upload all of this information into Google My Maps to create the final map. First, I took my edited spreadsheets pictured here and uploaded it into Google My Maps as a CSV file. This spreadsheet includes the title, date, permalink, abstract, subject, Street View link, latitude, longitude, and working notes, which contain sources for hard to identify locations. Basically, everything that builds the map is in this spreadsheet, except for the record images for each location downloaded from the LDL. Once the CSV was uploaded using Google My Maps, it instantly populated all of the locations and associated metadata into the map. I then proceeded to upload one by one the corresponding images from the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections by clicking the photo icon located on the bottom of each location record on the map, as you see in this example pictured here for the St. Bernard Shopping Center. I then selected what kind of base map to use, my location icon, and gave the map a title and description. And here's a screenshot of the final map, which includes 67 usable locations out of the original 87 items that my search requirements generated. A concentration of these locations are centered around Canal Street on the edge of the Central Business District, which was once the main shopping area for the city. This map could easily be expanded to incorporate more items from the Charles L. Frank and Frank Bertocci photograph collections, and was created to function as a prototype that could be used as a teaching tool and as a jumping off point for other inquiries and additions. Additional locations from the collection that could be subjects such as restaurants, hotels, bars, grocery stores. Functionally, the map reveals a layer of these locations' history, and I'd argue a psychogeographic one. If utilized on a mobile device, you can walk between points using it as a guide to inform your route and discover new details of the urban environment with historic photos at the ready. Subsequently, the map could be further enhanced by adding walking routes people took and details of their experiences. If you choose to walk these locations, remember to put the phone away and engage with your surroundings as much as possible. Still, even without walking these locations, the map can provide an approximation of psychogeographic discovery through toggling between the Google Street View and the historic images provided. New Orleans lends itself to the development of digital humanities projects seen through a psychogeographic lens, projects that highlight the depth of its history and tell stories that highlight its diversity of experience. Some of the collections available on the LDL can be utilized to illustrate this, and the projects you will learn about as part of the LDL as Data Fellowship presentations will highlight these potential uses as well. Please follow the link provided during this presentation or visit the LDL as Data webpage to check the map out for yourself. I would like to leave you with this quote from Rebecca Solnit. Perhaps it's that you can't go back in time, but you can return to the scenes of a love, of a crime, of happiness, and of a fatal decision. The places are what remain and are what you can possess, or what is immortal. They become the tangible landscape of memory, the places that made you, and in some way, you too become them. They are what you can possess, and in the end, what possesses you. I would like to thank the LDL as Data team, the other fellows, and all of you for joining us today. It has been a fun project to work on, and I hope it has given you some ideas concerning how to use collections as data and how such uses can influence how you think about metadata, the metadata you choose for collections moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. If anyone has questions, you can drop them in the chat or just unmute yourself or raise your hand, whatever you're more comfortable with. Victoria says her grandmother used to work at Crest. So that's a nice connection.
Nice. Nice.
I was thinking of a question while you were talking, especially about psychogeography. I had never heard that term before, but I was familiar with Guy Debord, who you cited from the Society of the Spectacle.
Of course.
So in the Society of the Spectacle, he talks about how all the spectacle around us in our modern world, window displays, billboards, ads, TV, sort of isolates us from human interaction. And instead of human interaction, we just get interaction with things we're observing and the desire to consume.
Right.
And that's sort of something that happens to us without our intention, right? So I'm wondering how psychogeography connects to that. Is that something that we're affected unintentionally, but it also almost seems like a mindful practice of like observing your environment and being grounded?
I mean, it makes me think a little bit about like Walter Benjamin's like Arcades project, which in a lot of ways was this cataloging of all sorts of details in the environment, right? And part of that's based on the idea that even those advertisements and other things that are about consumption, which he was also coming from a Marxist perspective, but like can in a way encapsulate the whole, right? So it's looking more critically at that stuff as well as trying to pick up a lot of detail from the environment. So it's not just like you see a picture of a Big Mac and then you're like, I want a Big Mac. It's like, you know, it's analyzing that a little bit more and like what kind of advertisements are maybe even in an area and what that says about its use and the demographics that are assumed to be using it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it almost seems like psychogeography is like could be a skill to release yourself from that isolation or that like kind of blinding.
Yeah, I mean, I think in part it can be about trying to become re-enchanted with things with the familiar, which I think my experience in New York was partially that, where you're always just running around and trying to get from point A to B, and where's my coffee, and where's my lunch, and where's the subway, and then I would take these really long walks, like multi-borough walks during my weekends, and just kind of float and drift through the city without any, like, maybe like I want to go over the Manhattan Bridge, but like there was nothing else other than that as part of what was directing me. And it caused me to experience in this other way that divorced it from the pressure that you feel by living in our current world and capitalism and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, psychogeography is very loosey-goosey. Like you can apply it in all sorts of ways. It's not hard, you know, it's fun too. It's academic if you want. It just depends how you approach it.
It makes me think of something we had been talking about with like you don't have to be an expert to do this. It's kind of fun. It's kind of easy. You don't need to have professional ArcGIS skills. And we had talked about sort of the digital humanities difference between like hacking and yakking. So like building programming versus kind of talking about digital humanities and that sort of thing. I wonder, like, doing a project like this that's fairly accessible for anyone to use, are there implications of that culturally? Like, does that make sense?
Implications of that culturally. So, I mean, even if you're yakking, you might not, I mean, I think involve like just the average person using something like this, they don't necessarily know that they're doing GIS, right? Like if you're just experiencing the end product. And I think like working with students or building projects like this, you are hacking at a low level, like you are making a map and you are using data and you are creating a tool that can help you make new distinctions and observations and discoveries about an area. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that even on a subconscious level, it can have an effect. I mean, you think about how much of this is used in news reporting to kind of like give you a sense of history or, I mean, even just like mapping lead poisoning in a city, you know what I'm saying? It's like, there's ways that people can be like, I lived in that neighborhood in the 70s and now I maybe understand why people were sick in this, you know what I'm saying? It's like, there are implications. And I do think that since we live in such a visual culture, that making things interactive gets people engaged because they're already on their phones. Like, so why not make it where it's, you know, accessible in that way? And like, as with anything, if you become intrigued, you always can just open another tab and do more, you know, like more research. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm really like digging this idea of these maps that are becoming more and more popular because they're more and more easy to make as almost as a mindfulness tool for engaging with your environment.
For sure.
I like this idea.
I do too.
Victoria asked if there's a particular reason you chose Google My Maps.
It was easy. And I had also like looked at your, what was it, the wildflowers example that you have? Like I kind of used that as a template when I was doing the proposal. So I never really jumped outside of that, like to look for something else. I did a little bit of digging, but I am interested in doing either expanding this project or doing other projects that are similar, and looking at other ways that one could map and what control you might have over it. Because one thing with Google My Maps is that obviously on mobile, it forces you into Google Maps. So it can kind of clutter it in a way, though you could also argue it adds to it. It depends on how you want to approach it. And also just like other ways of manipulating the way that it formats just would be cool to have more control over.
Mhm.
So if you have any suggestions, Victoria, please let me know.
There's a lot of these types of projects that use crowdsourcing to add pins to sort of communal maps. Do you have thoughts about that? How if this map became a crowdsourced project, how it might change?
I do. And I guess like with that question, it's like crowdsourcing it, including images, right? Like, do you want to crowdsource it where you could send out requests for people to come from their own personal collections of locations of their family homes or businesses or whatever, farms, it can be rural as well, and include those? Or if you want to try to crowdsource using like the LDL collections. I mean, when I think about crowdsourcing it on the other side of it, it makes me think of a tool that I created for documenting art that was hanging on campus at Loyola. And I just made like a Google tool basically where people could put in all the information about the artwork, where it was located, and then attach an image with a set of questions. But then it generates a spreadsheet that easily could be edited and then used and augmented to like create a map by someone on the back end. So, I mean, I think that could be a really fun approach to kind of gather like community history around a subject of any sort. So I kind of love that idea, like as creating community around everyone being invested in that way.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool project at Loyola. I'm going to take a pause for any other questions for Jen or Curry.
I have a quick question for you, Curry. Thank you for this presentation. This was amazing. I wonder while you were working on it, if there was any particular entry that you liked a lot, maybe a favorite building, et cetera, something that you were maybe surprised at how much it changed, or any particular, one entry that you would like to talk about.
I don't remember the exact name of it, but I can find it. And it's not like hugely spectacular by what's there. It's actually by what isn't there now. So I used to live over in the Broadmoor Fontainebleau area of New Orleans, and Broad Street is a major road there that used to have completely different kind of economic development than it does now. And there's a pumping station there at the top of MLK, et cetera. But there was this series of shops that now is just this empty lot, and with some chain link around it or whatever. And on the other side, there's now like a brewery or something that used to be like a car dealership. And I mean, this was something that I drove by every day, going to work back and forth. It was always part of my route. And when I discovered that, like, which it's been undeveloped for years, I'm wondering, it makes me wonder all these questions as to why. And it also kind of shows the history of economic, rise and fall, and like what that implications of that are in that area of the city. So that's one example that I've got.
I'm going to quickly share my screen because I'm going to take this opportunity to plug a project Sophie and I have been working on. We recently launched the Journal of Critical Digital Librarianship. The first issue will be out in the next couple of months, and it will be a special issue of papers derived from some of the talks you guys probably attended last year during the LDL as Data Speaker series. So be on the lookout for that. And we are currently accepting submissions for our spring 2022 issue. You can send Sophie or I an email if you want to discuss an idea. We're looking especially at work that uses feminist, anti-racist, anti-colonial, queer approaches to interrogate digital librarianship. I wanted to throw that out there, share the news, send us your work if it's relevant. We'd love to see it. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. And we will be back on October 27th to hear from our fellow Alexandra Chasen. Bye, everyone.